The big question, is an election in 2013 then the only way to end the parliament deadlock and the policy paralysis? That's the big question that we are raising at the moment. Joining me now, Meenakshi Lekhi, spokesperson of the BJP, BJ Panda, member of parliament of the Biju Janata Dal, Devi Prasad Tripathi, member of parliament and general secretary and chief spokesperson of the NCP. With me, Kumar Ketkar, chief editor of the daily Divya Marathi, one of the country's most respected journalists, and Pallavi Ghosh, Deputy National Bureau Chief at CNN-IBN, who tracks the Congress party. Meenakshi Lekhi, let me come to you. It seems that the BJP is determined not to cooperate with the government till such time as the ministers resign. Am I to understand that you have decided no resignation, no legislation? Would that be a fair way to put your position?
Absolutely. Absolutely, this is the way, because this is a government, because it's talking about food security bill at a time when it is looting the country with both hands and expects the opposition to clap with both hands. That's not going to happen. So far as the stand is concerned, that BJP's anti-poor is incorrect, because all our states are having food security acts of their own, and we have been working at it even when the Prime Minister and others were opposing distribution of food grains while they were getting stalled in the granaries.
Would you prefer that the government went to the people? Would you prefer that the government adjourn Parliament, sine die and call for an election now?
That is one way. The other way is, if there is any seriousness about discussing the food bill or the land acquisition bill, the two corrupt ministers have to be removed, because they cannot loot outside and discuss food security inside. That's not going to happen, for the simple reason these very policies are responsible for keeping people hungry.
Okay,
so
I get your point. You're saying that you will not allow this parliament to function and allow legislation to take place while you believe what are seen as corrupt ministers, according to you, remain in the government. DP Tripathi, given this belligerent stand being taken by the BJP, why not just adjourn Parliament, sine die? Seriously look at the possibility which I have put today of going to the people. I am told Sharad Pawar has already told today the Prime Minister and Sonia Gandhi that no legislation should be passed in an atmosphere of confrontation, that even serious bills like food security require serious discussion. Given that that discussion is not going to take place, why not go to the people now?
See, Rajdeep, our position has been very clear.
Yes.
We want Parliament to function.
Yes.
And you cannot pass important bills like food security bill, where almost 70 amendments have been proposed about that bill.
Yes.
So all those bills, which are important bills, land acquisition bill, and all these bills which concern the people of India, they should be discussed in Parliament. That is what
Parliament
we have been appealing to the opposition.
If Parliament is not discussing them,
we have been telling him, no, please, no, I am telling you that what we want the opposition to do is, please fight the government, oppose the government. Why you are fighting Parliament? Oppose the government. You demand resignation of this minister, that minister, and argue it in Parliament. What is the entire problem is that the opposition, unfortunately, is not being positive about.
Quick response, Meenakshi, quick response. That if you want to demand resignation, demand it on the floor of the House.
Yes, why not? You know, this is a very devious strategy. Let me explain Mr. Tripathi's stand.
Yes.
The government, whenever we are moving the adjournment motion is not like adjournment in the court, but adjournment motion means you drop everything and discuss this matter as importantly and as early as possible.
Yes.
Then adjournment motions are declined by this very speaker, because when we move an application for adjournment motion, she has to consult the government, and Treasury benches oppose that. And because Treasury benches oppose that, the motion is not moved. So this government wants to dictate its terms under which rule we bring what motion, number one. Number two, when it was decided in all party meeting that leader of opposition will be allowed 5 minutes to speak and then stage a walkout so that finance bill could be passed, at that time she spoke for 2 minutes, and within 2 minutes She was interrupted 60 times, and the entire episode is present on the YouTube. Anyone can count the numbers, and thereafter her mic was switched off. This is the manner in which they want to conduct business. I'm sorry, we will not part. We cannot conduct business with this kind of government.
I get your point and the government's point. You know, Jai Panda, you're caught literally in the middle, even on our television screen. I saw your tweet today where you said you are going to Parliament every day, signing in the register and going home even without taking your daily wage. Is there a growing sense of frustration building up within some MPs that this 15th Lok Sabha has now reached the point of no return? It's already the least productive Lok Sabha. Might as well wind it up and go to the people.
Rajdeep, I have been writing to the Lok Sabha for the last couple of sessions, returning my salary for the days that the Parliament did not function. But you know, that's really not the answer. This is really an anguished response, keeping in mind how angry the people of India are at what is going on. And I must point out, you're right, we are in the middle. The BJD is not aligned with either the UPA or the NDA. And we are appalled by the cynicism on both sides. Let me just point out, you know, it is true that the government's brazenness has crossed all limits, and it is impossible to tolerate that. But what's the point of disrupting question hour, where we get a chance to actually put the government on the mat? Now, at the same time, when the government expects us to participate in discussion, it is equally true that the government itself obstructs discussions, does not agree on censure motions, does not agree on voting discussions. So there is cynicism on both sides.
Given that, should you go to the people? Quick answer. Given that, would you prefer that the 15th Lok Sabha is dissolved and that elections are called?
My answer would be that we would prefer that Parliament function with a more conciliatory approach by both the government and the extremely opposed BJP. But if it cannot function, we have no problem facing the people.
You have no problem.
We had a very strong mandate from the.
You have no problem facing the people. I get your point. I get your point. I'll come back to you in a moment.
Parliament function.
Come back to you in a moment. Kumar Ketkar, I remember a few months ago you cited the example of Indira Gandhi in 1970. Then too, Indira Gandhi found herself in a parliament where she was targeted in a sense by all.
And she was in minority.
She was in a minority. There was a split in the Congress. The opposition was baying for her blood. She took in 1969 the bold decisions of abolishing privy purses, bank nationalization, eventually decided to go to the people. Is that what you think this government should also consider? If they believe the food security bill, for example, is so important, go to the people, let the country decide.
Well, actually that is a possibility. Those no situations are absolutely comparable. But at that time she said, they say, Indira hatao, मैं कहती हूँ गरीबी हटाओ. Similarly, this government can say, हम कहते हैं भूख हटाओ. They are saying सरकार हटाओ. So they can go to the people by saying that हम कह रहे हैं कि भूख हटाओ.
No, through a food security bill, which many believe is a flawed bill, which many believe
that
requires discussion. Meenakshi Lekhi is saying, how can you have say that you are a pro-poor government while your ministers are looting?
That's a different point. Here the question is whether adjournment, sine die, calling for elections, and whether to take food security bill to the poll is actually a political decision, and that political decision can be handled actually politically without going into the corruption.
So you're saying much like 69-70 when Indira took contentious issues like bank nationalization and abolition
and
of
most people don't remember.
Sonia Gandhi should be ready to do the same.
Yeah, most people don't remember that in 1969 when she nationalized bank, it was ordinance, and later on when the bill failed in Rajya Sabha by one vote, and actually the bill formally got passed. I mean, it was there, but formally got passed only after she won the 1971 Garibi Hatao election.
So you're saying if the government really had guts, they should probably take the food security bill through an ordinance, go to the elections, and only if you win the election, then you are in a position to...
and then you can prove your sincerity to the people, that we are going for food security bill.
Is there a sense, Pallavi, you're getting that Sonia Gandhi is ready to do that? Ready to do what Kumar Ketkar is saying? Because today, for the first time, there are signs that are coming that from people close to the to 10 Janpath, that there is a possibility that Sonia Gandhi may be inclined possibly to push for a dissolution of this parliament if necessary and go for an October-November election?
I think so. I do agree with him. I think first the government is of course looking at bringing an ordinance on both the food security bill and the land acquisition bill 1. I think they would want to go in for elections on a high note, and a high note is not just a parliament session where they try to project that the BJP is anti-poor, but a high note also would be perhaps winning at least one of those crucial state elections. If they manage to win, for example, Madhya Pradesh, and there's a reason, I don't know why, but the Congress seems to be feeling that there's a possibility of them coming back to Madhya Pradesh.
No, Karnataka. Let's talk about Karnataka. Are we saying Karnataka is tomorrow? If Congress, as exit polls say, is likely to win Karnataka, will that embolden this government to go in for an election? Ultimately, let the people of this country decide whether they want a food security bill of the kind which the Congress is pushing for.
I was talking about a high note. I don't think at this point of time the government is seeing itself in a high note, despite a victory in Karnataka. But remember, if they are happy about the Karnataka elections tomorrow, there's always a Pawan Bansal ghost behind them. Yes. And this is not the situation in which they would want to go in for elections.
So why aren't they asking Pawan Bansal to go? Why don't they accept the opposition demand? Here is a minister now who could well be investigated by the CBI tomorrow. Why is there really a serious divide between the Prime Minister and the party on this issue of getting Pawan Bansal in particular to resign?
Absolutely, Rajdeep. They should have gone in for the resignation of Pawan Kumar Bansal when he offered it on Saturday morning. There's no reason why the Congress party did not ask him for resignation, but the fact that the Prime Minister stuck to its grounds. He said that if he goes, Ashwini Kumar goes, and then I have to go.
Okay, so the Prime Minister is worried in a sense that if Pawan Bansal and Ashwini Kumar have to go, then he will be in the line of fire. But let me come back to the point that Kumar has raised, because it's central to the question I've asked about whether elections in 2013 are the way forward. Meenakshi Lekhi, you heard Kumar Ketkar saying, let Sonia Gandhi do an Indira Gandhi, let her go to the people and let the people decide whether they want a food security bill of the kind that the Congress is claiming it would like to bring. Do you believe that the BJP is ready for that battle? And that's the right way forward.
No, we are absolutely ready. We are in battle gear as it is. The question is whether this government has the gumption to enact this act. For the simple reason that they cannot be resigning on high note. They are actually under the cover of corruption, yes. And corruption is the cause of hunger, number one. Number two, they are looting the country with both hands, and under those situations, how will they explain? And when it comes to food security bill, our states have been given, are giving the food security to people when the government was opposing it. And food security of the kind, when we are giving at the rate of 1 rupee, rice and wheat to most families, and also lactating mother, pregnant mother, school going children, midday meal to all those people, all the people in a village. So our food security model of Chhattisgarh has been very well appreciated by the Supreme Court, and this is a very flawed model which is talking about APL and BPL and other such things, and they don't have a clear mandate on even food security. So but let me complete one line. That when their hands are tarnished on coal scam, they cannot use food security bill to whitewash the blackening of their hands and faces.
Okay.
We are going to expose them to the public, and we are going to tell the public what this entire drama is all about.
Okay,
it is not about
given
security,
you're saying you will take your battle both to the street and parliament, but I'm coming back to that question, whether elections in a sense are the ideal cleansing process in a democracy. DP Tripathi, you know, there comes a stage where every government, as Oliver Cromwell once said, in the name of God, go. This government, given the fact that it is dependent on Mayawati, Mulayam, that it is a minority government, is a bit of a paralyzed patient at the moment in ICU. Has the time come for UPA to, instead of struggling like an ICU patient into 2014, go in for this 2013 election? What is holding you back?
You see, Mr. Sharad Pawar is the first political leader who made a statement a few weeks ago that after the withdrawal of support of TMC and especially of DMK, UPA has become weaker. Therefore, the early elections are possible. So, this possibility of early elections...
NCP supports it? NCP supports an early election? You agree with this thing that it is better to call for an election rather than limp along into 2014?
NCP has always maintained that going to the people is the best alternative in a democracy. So you should be a political party, must be prepared for elections at every time. This is our public stand.
Your
which has been
public,
stated
so the
by no
NCP
lesser
stand,
person than Mr.
NCP
Sharad
stand
Pawar.
is coming as clear as possible. Going to the people is often the best way forward. So at least one party is openly coming out and saying, in a sense, that an election in 2013 may be the best way forward. Jai Panda, in the case of your party, you also have an Orissa state election. Does that trouble you, or do you support what DP Tripathi is saying, that in a democracy you must be prepared to go to the people at any time?
Rajdeep, I think you must be aware from surveys conducted by many organizations what the BJD's position in Orissa is. Naveen Patnaik remains by far the most popular leader in the state.
Yes.
So we have no difficulty in facing the people. But at the same time, let's point out,
Yes.
no party has actually asked for the government to go yet, because they do at least nominally have a majority in the Lok Sabha.
No, is that the reason,
real
or because
problem is
MPs
that
don't want to, is that the reason, or is that because MPs don't want to lose a single day of their parliament term?
Well, as I said, we are absolutely prepared to face the people whenever this government decides to call it a day. In fact, it's been in ICU for many months. Everybody knows that. But the reality is they nominally have a majority in the Lok Sabha. And till now, nobody has asked for the government to go. They've only asked for the tainted ministers to go. And that is why it is appalling, the cynicism with which suddenly the food security bill has been introduced to sort of try to derail the demand for the ministers, for the tainted ministers to go.
You know, that's...
Now, let me just say something very quickly here.
Yes.
The BJD has long ago extended support for the passage of a food security bill subject to thorough discussion of all the clauses.
Yes.
But we are appalled at the manner in which it is suddenly brought in. It's just cynicism.
No, I think you make an important point. Let me take that to Kumar Ketkar. Kumar Ketkar, you said that you gave the Indira Gandhi parallel. But there will be a sense, as Jai Panda is pointing out, that this is totally cynical, that your government is on the back foot. Your ministers are being charged with corruption. You suddenly bring in the food security bill and claim you are pro-poor. Now, surely the government cannot retain its moral authority on the corruption issue by bringing in the food security bill.
Well, actually, moral authority has been, compounded for quite some time. So I think, as Panda said, it is in ICU. But why wait for multiple organ failure? Just because it is in ICU, wait for multiple organ failure? I think going to the people.
Bringing food security
I don't think
bill
it is cynical.
I don't think it is cynical.
I don't think it's a cynical ploy, because it was planned before. It was planned before Ashwini Kumar and Pawan Bansal issue flared. So you cannot say it was planned afterwards.
No, but you suddenly claim to be pro-poor because you are trying to divert attention from your corruption scandals.
It was planned before. Now the issue came simultaneously. It doesn't mean that it was planned at that time. And moreover, just to give you an example, because you quoted Cromwell and all that,
yes.
Even Margaret Thatcher, though polls were not called, Margaret Thatcher was asked to resign in the last minute, and finally only for 1 year John Major came and finally called for election. So things change in parliamentary democracy. Prime ministers change, elections come, early elections come, midterm poll comes. Even in 1979 the elections came after, when the Labour Party was in power. I think happened because of midterm
No, are you
polls.
suggesting that if you were to advise the Congress today, it would be that go to the people of the country, much as what DP Tripathi seems to be suggesting?
I don't think DP Tripathi has suggested that. DP Tripathi has said that they are ready.
Yes.
He is not suggesting that. But
Okay.
I am only drawing a parallel. When you are in total crisis, don't wait for multiple organ failure to develop.
Is that what the sense you get, Pallavi, that the Congress today is pushing this food security bill, is pushing land acquisition, knowing that these bills will not be passed in this parliament given the logjam, but doing it because they need some issue which they can take to the people of this country?
Absolutely,
and they
Rajdeep.
intend to make food security the issue on which they want to fight the next election.
Absolutely, Rajdeep, and this is becoming very apparent, and the way they suddenly pushed in it for discussion, it really did come as no surprise to at least the Congress party and the government managers, because this is, you're right, it was completely pre-planned, it was very well orchestrated. Sonia Gandhi saying we won this bill, and in fact Congress sources tell us that Sonia Gandhi did tell all her party managers yesterday in Central Hall, please be aggressive. Push for the bill. We want that message to go out to the media. We want the message to go out to the people of the country that I want the bill. Is the BJP which is not letting
But
the
how
bill
will
come.
how will that take away the taint of corruption? That's the
I don't
question.
think taint of corruption. Even in
The
1960,
BJP has decided to say that this is going to the people saying this is the most corrupt government we've had since 1947. Can the Congress take on that
same
kind of
thing
campaign by saying food security
the
is our
same
answer?
thing was said in 1971, the same thing was said in 1977, the same thing was said in 1989. Corruption issue has been dogging governments after governments ever since Jayaprakash Narayan started his movement. So I don't think, nobody is saying corruption is not issue. Point is whether corruption is such a dominant issue that going to the people can be stopped.
You know, Meenakshi Lekhi, respond in a sense, but the larger question here, and let me widen this, because while the UPA faces a crisis of governance and corruption is a serious issue that confronts this government, the BJP also needs to get its house in order, because if the UPA has a crisis of governance, the BJP has a leadership crisis. Who will lead your party? Is that one of the reasons why the BJP too is not pushing as hard as some would expect for a snap poll? Today one of your MPs, suspended MPs, Ram Jethmalani, has said there is match fixing going on between the NDA and the UPA. The NDA also doesn't want an immediate election.
I don't agree with what Mr. Jethmalani is stating, because he has his own imaginative powers, but at the same time, the manner in which the government's conduct was towards leader of opposition is most abhorring in any democracy, because leader of opposition is also a constitutional post and
Ma'am,
has
I get your point. You're not answering
not
my
because
question.
Government wants.
If the
No,
government has a
I'm
crisis
answering,
of governance, do you have a crisis of leadership which is preventing you from demanding an immediate election?
Absolutely not. No, I'll tell you what is preventing us.
Yes.
What is preventing us is the BSP and SP. The decision makers in this entire episode are BSP and SPs, and repeatedly they have come to support a degraded government,
Yes.
a degraded governance, and in such situations when they have used CBI repeatedly, whether it's DMK, whether to keep its ally, to keep its spoke together,
Yes.
under those circumstances, the opposition making no confidence motion is not going to help, because if this particular motion fails for 6 months, you can't carry the motion, and you are giving
So you're
breather
saying,
to the government.
you're saying it's the Samajwadi Party and the BSP who have to take that call. They are the two parties. Okay.
And the second thing,
Yes.
and the second thing, what Mr. Ketkar said, that this was planned before the episode of Pawan Bansal and Ashwini Kumar happened.
Yes.
I quite see what he's saying, and I also want to bring on record that that was the plan before bringing the budget, so that they will bring a budget which is going to be a populist budget and then leave on a high note that we could not comply because these people deserted us, and that was the plan. But VVIP helicopter deal came in at that point, and then government had to stay on for managing that deal. So
Okay.
the corruption after corruption is what is giving the breather to this government, because then they stay in power to manage those deals and
Okay,
to
I
manage
get
the
your
documents.
point.
We have seen
I
how
get your
CBI
point,
has
ma'am.
not received a single document on coal scam.
I get your
between
point.
the period of post 2004,
I get-
2006, 2009.
I get your point, ma'am. You made your point, but DP Tripathi, as an ally, you've said in this program, a government has to be ready for elections at any given time. Let me get a final clarity from you. Are you saying, in your view, that it would be in the best interests of this government, to have an early rather than a later poll?
A people's verdict, Rajdeep, is
Yes.
always in the best interest of a government in a democratic system. Now, this is what Mr. Sharad Pawar has stated a few weeks ago, and therefore,
Yes.
we are not saying that do not go for the people's verdict or
Right.
what they think about the government. But my point is, the question which nobody is asking, even an enlightened journalist like Mr. Kumar Ketkar didn't ask Meenakshi Lekhi about the serious corruption charges in the BJP itself. No one asked this question. What is happening today, I'm saying it in a non-partisan way, is unfortunately both the government and the opposition are not functioning according to the proper democratic norms.
Okay, before I make this another
Exactly.
BJP versus Congress, Tutu Mehmet, Jai Panda, again you're the man in the middle. Do you believe that there is a fundamental problem at the moment with parliamentary democracy that we are not addressing? That even if there is an election, there could well be a hung parliament. Again, you could have a situation of confrontation and chaos. That effectively the relations between governments and opposition in this country have broken down. And that is the real problem which no one is addressing at the moment.
Rajdeep, I'll make 2 quick points. I've already talked about the cynicism of the government.
Yes.
But I also want to point out the cynicism of some in the opposition.
Yes.
Because despite everything else, there are some bills on the table that the opposition has been saying they support.
Yes.
So why not limit the obstruction of parliament to only when the tainted ministers are involved? And for other issues where they support the bills, why not have a discussion and pass it? So there is cynicism on both sides, unfortunately. Now your question about whether the system has broken down.
Yes.
I have been saying this very often, and in fact I have said this on your show earlier also.
Yes.
Unfortunately, our rules of parliament predate independence, and there are no clear rules. You know, unlike in England, if 40 MPs want a discussion, that must happen. Whereas here in India, it is left to consensus, which gives every party a veto power, and the government is misusing its veto power to not allow real discussions which have a censure motion to be voted on at the end of it. So we actually need to make structural changes in parliament, not just talk about the egos involved.
Okay, a final word then to you, Kumar. If you were to advise Manmohan Singh and Sonia Gandhi on this, would you say do what Indira Gandhi did, go back to Indira Gandhi in 1969, let this country decide for itself what kind of government it wants?
Well, I am not in possession of all the data and the intelligence that they might be having on the situation or the predicament they are in. But if whatever data and the predicament that I understand sitting outside, perhaps I would recommend that. In fact, I felt it last year that they should have done that, so the present crisis would not have come. But the present crisis has come because they did not think the issue taking straight to the people.
Final word, Pallavi, is there a serious move within the Congress for this October-November election that along with the state winter elections, let's go for a general election, or is this only a view of a very tiny section of the Congress today?
It's a view of an increasing section within the Congress party, Rajiv, and we've been saying this, October-November election is a high possibility.
Is a high possibility now. Well, we'll leave it at that. Maybe it's also a better time of the year to hold an election. On that note, Meenakshi Lekhi, Jai Panda, Kumar Ketkar, TP Tripathi and Pallavi Ghosh, thank you very much for joining us. Editor's take, where do we stand? The UPA has the numbers in parliament, but does it have the moral majority anymore? There can be no better test of the government's credibility to govern than if it puts its record before the people of the country. A functioning democracy is preferable to a non-functioning parliament. The UPA would be best advised to take its case to the electorate rather than survive like a patient in ICU. Elections may well throw up a hung parliament again, but they can also often be a cleansing process in this country. Maybe they are the medicine the system needs to get back its capacity to govern. And yes, October is a nicer month for elections than the heat and dust of April, May next year.